Welcome to the Dubio Pro Justitia podcast. The following is a conversation with Ambassador Namira Negm. She's an Egyptian diplomat, professor, and international lawyer. Ambassador Namira has intervened in landmark cases in the world's highest courts, such as the ICC and ICJ, and specifically, she represented the state of Palestine in the ICJ's Advisory Opinion on the legal consequences arising from the practices and policies of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem, something that we'll discuss further on the line. Hope you enjoy.
So, to start, as you intervene in the ICJ, where you try to show the court that the occupation by the Israeli pertains to racial discrimination, persecution, and apartheid against the Palestinian people. I wanted to go to the beginning, the Nakba in the 1948. Could you please explain to the audience what was it? What did it consist of?
Well, it started before the Nakba, the entire problem, because since the Balfour Declaration, there was like an encouragement of immigration from Europe towards Palestine under the mandate, the British mandate at the time, 1917, where there was a lot of push and assistance for the Jewish populations in Europe to migrate towards the Middle East and specifically towards Palestine. So this started like some demographic changes, and the pictures show that it was like there was always in this land Christians, Muslims, and Jews living there. But with the increase of the numbers of Jews flowing in, it made demographic changes, but still the Palestinians from Arab origins were still the majority. Then with 181 resolution of the General Assembly to separate Palestine into two states and to have one Jewish state, one Palestinian state, Arab state, and the other is Jerusalem to become international. Because of this resolution, Israel announced its independence, and the creation or the establishment of the state of Israel started. And that was also refuted by the Arab states at the time. And it led to a war between both parties where, where Israel at the time managed to kick out a lot of Palestinians, as well as taking a lot of land from the partition plan. So why it's called the Nakba? Because hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were killed, kicked out of their homes, and they became refugees in neighboring countries and some around the globe. Let us go a step backwards also before the Nakba. Before the partition plan up to the Nakba, there was a lot of movement from some of the Arab population who started to see that there is like existing problem now, and they were afraid for their kids, for their families, so they decided to leave for like a couple of weeks, for a month or two, down, because there were skirmishes between the Arabs and the Jews at the time. So they left, hoping that they will go back just when things calm down. Unfortunately, after 1948 war and in the laws of Israel, like the dawn of the state of Israel, stated that those who left Palestine under the mandate, or at the time, like call it whatever, who left this part of land to states, specifically to Egypt, and others who were at war with Israel. They are not allowed to come back. They're not allowed to take their property back, and they were totally banned from entering the country and go back to their property. Of course, there was a huge number in Lebanon, a huge number in Jordan, a huge number in Egypt. So those were not allowed to go back to that to their business or to their property. So apart from the human toll of what happened in 1948, there is another level where it has to do with the businesses, with the property, like the economic aspect of those who left, either kicked out by the war, or just left before hoping they will come back. All of these people lost their property, lost their businesses, and Israel took over this property and the business, and under consecutive acts and laws, started to make sure that this property will never go back to the Arabs that were kicked out during the Nakba. So that's why it's called Nakba in Arabic, because it's a sad story for the Arabs.
Yeah, and you still have the images of older Palestinian people with their keys, with their old keys from the house that they had before the 1948. Yeah, it's
And they
intense.
left with nothing. And by the way, one element that we should also not forget, that it's not only the Palestinians that were not able to go back to their property or to their business, but all the nationals of the countries that Israel considered them at war at the time, or enemies of the state. So if you're Lebanese or an Egyptian who had business in the occupied territories at the time, um, you will not be able to go back. So many people also from the neighboring countries lost their money and their property because of the Nakba.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that it started long before, even with the Balfour Declaration, because I also read a few books, and it even started like Zionism, the idea of moving the Jewish question in 1894, even with the Ottoman Empire, where like the Viennese journalist Herolds tried to lobbying for the creation of a Jewish state, and various places were considered, even Uganda. There's the Uganda scheme, and lastly, it was the Palestine, the supposed promised land. So I wanted you to further your claims, your points on the ICJ regarding the current Israeli racial discrimination towards Palestinians on the occupied Palestinian territories.
Well, the occupation started, if we go back to history, it started with 1948, and we have resolutions on that. The development, because of the peace processes and what happened on the ground, the focus became not on 1948 territories, but on the 1967 territories, because things remained escalating between the Arab countries and Israel on the peace process started. But before that, in 1967, Israel launched a war on all the borders. So Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan were attacked. And the aftermath of 1967 war was occupying more territories in the region. So we have Sinai from Egypt was taken. We have part of the West Bank was taken, or basically the West Bank because it was at the time Consul Radani next to Jordan. Then we had the Golan Heights in Lebanon and Syria. So we have Golan Heights in Syria and then Saba in Lebanon. So these occupied territories became the focus of the debate. Jerusalem was also taken, Gaza was also taken. So because of the developments and in at the time in 1960 from the Security Council 242 asking Israel to withdraw from these territories that it occupied in 1967. After the developments of the peace process between Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Israel, and so on, we started to have of negotiations directly and indirectly between Israel and Palestine to try to sort the problem. And we reached the Oslo Accords, through which the Palestinian Liberation Organization was able to return partially to the territories of what we call Gaza Jericho, Gaza Ariha at the time. So Gaza is Gaza, Ariha is in the West Bank. So that became the or Jericho. What happened at the time, the shift became very clear that now we are only asking for the territories occupied in 1967. And that became acceptable to all parties. Few questions remained, and they said that would be the last phase of negotiations, including the return of the refugees of the compensation for those refugees, for their property and their losses. At the same time, the question of Jerusalem, because the fight over Jerusalem remained, and be it the east or the west. So that also became deferred until the last stage. So this is like just few elements. There are other elements. They said it will be left to the last stage of negotiations, but for now it was about the territory first and who will be there, who will be governing for these territories. Since 1967, or let's go back to early 50s, at the beginning of the establishment of the State of Israel, there was no intention to leave any territory that will be occupied. So although there were many steps taken by several governments of Israel towards negotiations to allow some, let's say, some territories to be given to the Palestinians, which is it's or their original territory. So basically giving it back to them, allowing their sovereignty. It was not really serious because, like, since Ben Gurion, if we go back to his statements in the first Knesset, it was very clear, even like he was saying the Jewish Jerusalem, and the international community doesn't understand the value of Jerusalem for the Jewish community. So it was like all through maximum land with minimum people. That is not explains even what's happening until today, and happened after 1967 with the like this entire process of course, more refugees, more problems with the neighboring countries, more occupation, and at the end we had like Jordan had its own territory complete, but Lebanon is actually is at war with Israel because they have only the armistice agreement. Syria is the same because the Golan Heights is still occupied. So when it comes to the Palestinians themselves, their territory remained occupied all through. And if I jump to Sharon's unilateral withdrawal from Gaza, where people or some people Gaza became independent, it's not true because Israel, although it removed boots from the ground on Gaza, controlled land, sea, and air completely. Like Gaza was under siege. Why we're saying it's under siege? Because no one can come in or out of Gaza by land, by air, or by sea without Israel controlling and approving.
Yeah,
So that is why like this continued as occupation, and Gaza was not independent.
yeah. Even the ICJ regarding the occupation, the 2005 exit of Israel, considered it didn't. It it didn't. It doesn't matter if they are there at the moment, but if they can, they established an authority and it can be exercised. And since Israel
Exactly.
remain capable of controlling the land, the sea, and their borders, the natural resources, yeah, the 2005 withdrawal of its military presence doesn't signify that they really left.
It's true, and that is why, for me personally, it's a bit dramatic when the ICC computer and the team brought and the arrest warrants before the arrest warrants were transferred to the chambers, that they mentioned that at least parts of Palestine were occupied. So I just wonder which part of Palestine that's not occupied. So this is something that's a bit tricky, legally speaking.
Yeah, and I think it's used very often, the idea that the 2005 exit withdrawing meant that the Palestinians were free and could completely choose their own destiny and their own use of resources, even with the natural resources, the gas that they have in the coastline that they cannot use because it's surrounded by the Israeli control. But so, and could you further explain why, how can we consider that how Palestinians are living in the occupied territories pertains to apartheid?
Okay, if we study the laws of Israel since the beginning of the state, you will find distinction in all the laws between the Arabs and the uh, by the right is called in the law the Ole. However, the Arabs, who are the inhabitants of the territories, were allowed residency and then later they gained nationality. So that is from the get-go.
Okay.
If you think about how the rest of the law, speaking about the property, about the cultural rights, about everything, removing the Arabic as a language, affecting the lives, the daily lives of the Palestinians. So there is racial discrimination. And that is, of course, like the first step to reach apartheid. And the consecutive reports of different UN bodies like the Human Rights Council, the inquiry commissions that went for Palestine from different commissions of the UN, all of them came out to speak about the racial discrimination and how it's being now more engraved in the society, is getting deeper and deeper by the laws from one side, which is leading to segregation. In many areas, Palestinians are not allowed to move, even if they have homes around it. So this led from beginning of the rapporteur when he was Michael Link, both of them spoke that this is apartheid. John Dugard is South African. He died. He knows what apartheid is, and he even said it's worse than what was happening in South Africa. You see it like, even if we're not speaking legally, you will find a lot of documented showing the difficulties and the hurdles the Palestinians have to go through if they are crossing checkpoints, going from point A to point B, just to go to their homes to work. And I do remember watching almost 25 years ago or 30 years ago a documentary made by a British journalist from the BBC who went to live the daily life of a Palestinian, going from like Gaza or the West Bank to go work in Israel and come back. And he was even commenting, these are ghettos. I don't understand how people who used to live in ghettos to enforce that on others. And he had a Palestinian driver, and on one of the weekend days, he decided to go to a beach. Who, like he read, it's a nice beach in the Israeli area, and he found the guards of the settlements, the driver, telling him, why is he here? He's a Palestinian, he's not supposed to be here, because he, as the British, was allowed, but with his driver was a problem. And he showed that all on the screen. And he ended up saying, like, this is not, like, this is apartheid. This is really an apartheid. And you can see bit by bit practice laws. And now with all the new laws adopted by the right-wing government, with the further annexing the territories and the complete, like I would say, annihilation of the rights of Palestinians and the Arabs, whether in Israel or around it, you can see it's a pattern. So it became more than just racial discrimination. It ended up reaching the level of apartheid. And you can see in the advisory opinion, although the court did not pronounce itself per se on apartheid, but it said that Israel has violated Article 3 of the Convention on Against Racial Discrimination, on the third. Why? Because this is exactly speaking about racial discrimination, apartheid. So although it didn't say it's apartheid, but it said it's in violation of that provision because of the evidence that was shown before the court that, yes, this is apartheid.
Yeah, and I think more and more documentation and documents and informations reports are being published that confirming that assessing that Israel is an apartheid, Israel and Palestine and the Palestinians live in an apartheid state, and this is even documented long before, and it's been documented for years and years. Even Achille Mbembe, like a Cameroonian writer, sociologist, while describing the colonial oppression and how the colonial structures affect the lives of the colonized, It mentions, of course, Palestine, and now they are completely segregated in the sense even roads, different roads, checkpoints, difficulty in assessing different points of other cities that are 20 minutes apart. So yeah, and going back to what you said regarding the settlements, even with ICJ saying that all settlements and occupation must be withdrawn, Israel is approving new settlements and doubling settlements all around its occupied territories. How do you see this ending? In the sense, how do you see a solution to this occupation?
Well, personally speaking, without the will, the political will to bring Israel to the negotiating table in order to any time we've been in this circle for years now, for decades since the beginning of the problem. On and off, we had the will of a government to negotiate, but not to give in anything. And this is the problem when you negotiate with someone more powerful, because today Israel has all the power on the ground, and the Palestinians only have the law on their side. So unless other states who are supporting Israel will take a step back and decide that no, it's about time to end this circle and bring in and continuous atrocities against the Palestinian population, we will have other cycles of violence again and again. It is way bigger than only Israel and Palestine. It includes a lot of interests. You mentioned a while ago the gas. We're talking about billions of dollars can come in the pockets of the Palestinians, which means they're independent. Yeah. So basically, when it comes to the gas will mean a cash flow to the authorities in Palestine, which means they can build their state. Israel doesn't want that. Some of its allies don't want that. On the other hand, why we keep finding cycles of violence? Because of the weapons and the sale of the weapons. This is also interest, and it's a lot of money involved. So if you think about some economies that are now running because of the massive weapon sales, then it's not going to be at any point in time win-win situation to say, okay, we'll stop this. Why I'm saying that, it's not only about the weapon sales because of the war itself, but also it's an incitement for a continuous weapons race in the region, which means again sales from those who are producing the weapons, so they gain a lot of money out of it. So that's on another side. So it's not about what is going on now is not about the hostages. It's not about Hamas. It's not about any of what's happened. It's just like I think by now all the world sees that everything that's happening for other reasons, not only neither to secure the safety of the hostages nor to get rid of Hamas or the others. So in a nutshell, having a Palestinian state is the solution to have the Palestinians under their own flag, start building their own state, and so on and so forth. However, as long as the international community or part of the international community that is supporting Israel blindly will keep thinking that this will be a threat to Israel, then we will remain in this vicious circle and will end up the cycle of violence few years on the go. We'll get another cycle of violence. And now even it's expanding beyond Palestine, as we can see with what happened in Syria. It's way beyond only what's happening in Palestinian territories.
Yeah, land grabbing. The problem with
But the
land
real
grabbing.
solution,
Yeah.
the real solution is peace, because like without the peace, then we have nothing. We'll keep getting in these cycles of violence.
But the thing is, as you said, when two parties are so, one has such power and one doesn't, as only law, international law, the powerful state and powerful party will try to squeeze everything that they want from the other part. And
It's true. It's the reality. But the whole thing is, which is why if things keep going like this and escalating, the world is falling into anarchy, and we're not getting into a proper order for a long time. And it's just like if we draw parallels with the history, let's say with the fall of the Roman Empire, yes, the world stayed in anarchy for a while until the rise of another power. So we are getting into this so quickly, more than we like faster than we anticipated. But politically speaking, we're getting there.
yeah, no, for sure. And I think this situation opens doors for every nation to do whatever it wants with disregard to international law, since they see Israel
Well,
being impune in doing what it is doing, with the starvation, with the prosecution. For example, the question of the administrative detentions. Almost, I think it rounds from 7,000 to 9,000 Palestinians that are detained without a trial in Israel, in their prisons, for years to come. Activists, lawyers, doctors, people that could have an impact in rebuilding Gaza, Palestine itself. And this has been recorded for so long. It didn't start a year and a half ago. I think that's the biggest problem is this was the world noticed it after October 7th, but it had long forgotten about Palestine and the question of Palestine.
well, let me just go backwards and like a little bit before 7th of October. If we think of the actions taken by the state of Palestine on the legal front, be it in the GA or in before the ICJ going for the advisory opinion for the illegality of the occupation, that was way before 7th of October. But why? Because exactly what you're saying is just like all of a sudden, Israel is doing what it wants by annexing more territories, demolishing the houses of Palestinians, kicking them out. It's a continuous story in the territories, building more settlements. And if you see the map of the settlements that we have shown in the court, you will discover like what is left for the Palestinians. It's just like they turned it into Bantustans, basically. So this is a difficult situation. The state of Palestine and at least renew the declarations from the ICJ about our inherent rights in relation to self-determination, in relation to our territories. So many people don't know that the advisory opinion started way before 7th of October, and by the Palestinian Authority. Like Hamas has nothing to do with it. And simply, and this is really the rhetoric that we fear here, that we are trying all peaceful means. We're not trying to go for the violent means. And there is no cooperation. So this eventually will make people stop believing in the peaceful means. And this is a real worry in the entire region, because you can say if you come from a position of power and you're not willing to cooperate at all, you will make the people, the population, lose faith in the peace. And this is something really serious for all of us. The advisory opinion was updating, like the request for the advisory opinion was updating the court in 2004 to 2024 of what happened, and asking the court to pronounce the illegality of the occupation with the consequences legally of such illegality on Israel, on Palestine, and all states, members of the international community, because it became like a worry that now, as you just said, the entire case will be forgotten. It's like, why are you forgetting about us? Of course, with the rise of the problems with the Ukraine war, everybody, like from the Western Hemisphere, was focused on Ukraine, and they started to forget about Palestine. And all the solutions brought forward since the last decision of the Obama administration that was put before the ICJ, before the Security Council for the illegality of the settlements, then the first Trump mandate, then the Biden mandate, it all led to the losses for the Palestinians. And nobody cares about what, like, as if Israel has a free hand with no remorse or parameters to stop. Like before that, even when we had such cycles of violence and wars against the Palestinians, usually the US presidents at a certain point, they try to at least pressure Israel to stop. Because the human toll and the damage is so high. But this time, they have a full free hand, which led to, like, I think it even affected the decisions, because when you start while things are quieter, but you're just showing the court that the settlements is increasing too much, the number of settlements, the number of the demographic changes, the number of people that are being kicked out of their homes, demolished houses, and so on, is great. You're trying to, but with what's happening in Gaza, with genocide happening in Gaza, this was, I would say, a force to push for the decisions of the court to expose the realities on the ground. We didn't advocate genocide, of course, in the advisory opinion, because it was on the illegality of the occupation, but showing that the current government, the previous government of Israel, like for 5 governments now, they are clearly calling for annexing the entire territory, kicking the Palestinians, killing the kids, calling them snakes and cockroaches. And it was like, it's too much. So showing all this was of assistance to the court to see the developments since its ruling of advisory opinion in 2004. I was like 2000, I forgot, the on the wall. And afterwards, showing that in 20 years, this is the development. Israel is not willing to withdraw from any of the occupied territories, which defeat the legality of an occupation, which is the temporal factor of the occupation.
Exactly. That's the big question, because occupation should be, first of all, you cannot acquire land by occupation. That's the main thing. And the occupation must end. It's a temporary concept and not eternal concept, I must say. And regarding
Exactly.
I think the biggest problem is with the genocidal acts that the UN report, special rapporteur for Palestinian rights, mentioned in her two reports. The killing of members of the group and deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of calculated calculated to bring its physical destruction, about its physical destruction, and this would be like the starvation and the lack of entering of aid to Palestine. And as we saw in the various flower massacres, when the Palestinians were hungry, starving, and at the same time you see all the killings and the executions. I wanted to believe if a positive ruling in the ICJ confirming that the genocide is happening in Palestine will solve anything, or the status quo will maintain.
I don't think that rulings of courts by itself will change anything. So far, it proved the contrary. Whenever the ICJ is pronouncing itself on something against Israel, Israel even calls the judges anti-Semitic, and then it increases the violence against the Palestinians. So I don't think per se, if we have a positive decision from the court, and in my conviction, if the court will not say genocide is happening, then it will say that it did not prevent the genocide, at least. But for me, like exactly what you read, all the elements of the crime of genocide are absolutely satisfied in this case. Why I'm saying this? Because the most difficult part to prove is the intent of genocide, the intent to commit genocide. So if we think of only, because some people say, oh, it's the numbers, see how many they are killed versus the population. It's not about the numbers, by the way. Like the convention and custom international law didn't speak about numbers. It spoke about actions and intent. So the actions are happening, like targeting a group, targeting the children of the group, targeting the amputated children of the group, targeting the civilian establishments, including hospitals that are hosting the civilians to treatment, the camps, like what happened in Jabalia camp, for example, or this is targeting even like innocent civilians. So this is happening. But then how we can say that there was an intent for the junior soldiers that we see happily killings or the torture to that they are not doing, like they are doing it sporadically and not by orders of the authorities. However, if we go back to all the statements of the ministers in the current government, they make it easy for the judges to say, yes, they have the intent. And it's not only this government, because from, like, as I mentioned, in few consecutive governments, it was very clear. They are saying, kill them all, kill them all, kill them all. What do you mean, kill them all? Kill them all means killing part of the group or all the group. So this is one. Of course, we hear apart from Prime Minister Netanyahu, you have ministers like Ben Gvir and Smotrich and others. How they incite for this. Gallant did the same. The one that is hidden so far behind everything and nobody speaks about is the chief of staff of the Israeli army. He's the one running the show. So don't tell me that all of them are just like all what they are saying falls into proving the intent of killing, torturing, and getting rid of the group or part of the group. It's very clear, including some of the statements saying, okay, why for other states won't take them? If you are so sympathetic with them, take them. So what do you mean? You are trying to expel them from their land, which already happened already in many phases in history, including recently when they keep expelling them from some areas of Gaza and they are refusing to return them. Even if we go back to the West Bank, which is like now I would say is the orphan of the issue because everybody's focused on Gaza because of the bombardment in Gaza, but nobody sees that Israel is annexing more land in the West Bank, fighting the Palestinians sporadically in the West Bank, getting them out of their homes to build settlements. So it's happening as we speak. Every day, there are people dying in the West Bank. We don't have the Hamas in the West Bank, but they are dying in the West Bank because of the project. And it was very clear from the map that Netanyahu showed in the GA of Greater Israel, how they look like. Now they are even occupying more and more of Syria. But nobody's speaking about that. That's aggression. Like since the beginning of this war, there wasn't anything coming out of Syria towards Israel, but Israel kept attacking Syria. So if we speak about international law, this is aggression. Why did we, as international community, we here is not me, it's just like international community, why the international community accused Russia of aggression against Ukraine and it's not accusing Israel of aggression against Syria? This is as simple as that.
I think
So
that's the main problem and why the international community doesn't believe and people don't believe in international law because it applies a certain way to the enemies of the states and with its allies it's double-faced. So it's an hypocrisy too with the.
but it's not the law, it's not the law. It's the politics that applying the law. This is the point. And
The
that is why I'm
enforcement, yeah.
saying exactly. So the law itself is the same, but the way we are trying politically to use the law is different. And this is causing problems. And it will keep causing problems if things remain as is. And unfortunately, the current situation is not giving a glimpse of hope to the deprived populations. So without this hope, we will not be able to, unfortunately, stop wars or stop the sense of nationalism that is rising now everywhere in the world and causing problems, or to stop terrorism. This is the whole thing. This is one of the root causes of terrorism, whether people agree or disagree, but this is one of the root causes of terrorism, that you are pushing people to be fundamentalists. If you are becoming a fundamentalist, you are pushing the other side to become a fundamentalist. This is a major issue. Has been studied by sociologists, by psychologists, by name it, by political scientists, and it is there, regardless of governments agree to it or not. But this is the reality.
Yeah, and you can see the factions, for example, Hamas and Hezbollah. They were all created after in 67 or 68, after the beginning of the Israeli state. So it shows, of course, people, when you are oppressed, you tend to try to become fundamentalists, and yeah, that's how terrorism arises. And I wanted to go back to what you said regarding the hospitals, and the big problem with the hospitals in Gaza and the attacks. It's even it was mentioned in the report of the UN special reporter that the Israeli weaponizes international humanitarian law by saying that to justify its civilian attacks, by saying that Hamas is using human shields, and therefore the risk of the civilians dying is of Hamas, or claiming that the hospitals are Hamas bases and attacked it. For example, the latest hospital, last big hospital in Gaza, where the director was taken out, always with the same arguments that there's terrorism bases inside of the hospitals. How do you fight that? How can the international community act to uphold international law while you see that
Okay,
extremism?
let us have our starting point. We have a claim. Has this claim been proved? Until now, the claimant didn't prove the claim. That's ABC of the law. I have a claim that the hospitals are used as human or whatever civilian shields for Hamas based. Until now, it was not proven in a Shifa hospital, in Kamal Udwan, in any hospital that has been bombarded. It's not true. In the camps, when they bombard the civilians, when they bombard the children, for God's sake, who said that the children of like the toddlers, the infants, are part of Hamas, or they have to do anything with Hamas? On the contrary, at least on the screens, we have seen the Israelis using the Palestinians as human shields. So this is like they want us to believe what they say and not to believe what we see. That doesn't make any sense. At the same time, if we think about, because when we think about terrorism here, let me be very clear. The actions by Hamas or Hezbollah, regardless of what some of the Western governments classify them, they are considered under international law freedom fighters. But because they are classified as fighters against occupation, they are supposed to abide by international law as well as the occupying power. So there is no justification to kill civilians by neither in 7th of October, before 7th of October, or after 7th of October. And the jungle rhetoric that is doing that. So why they are not allowed to do this? Because that's the law. It's not because one power, regardless of some classify it as terrorist organization, by the definition of international law, and that Gaza, which was run by Hamas, is occupied, they are a group of fighters for independence. But they are supposed to abide by international law. So they are not supposed to use human shields. They are not supposed to take civilian hostages. They are not supposed to target civilians, even if the occupying power is doing that. Let me be very clear. Say I Israel do this or no, Israeli is also violation to rights. So it's not allowing one party to the conflict to do something and the other not. The only thing here that one is more powerful than the other. If it's other way around, it would be the same. So neither party of a conflict are supposed to target civilians or use them as human shields. Unfortunately, today, yes, is the one doing that. And the international community is silent about it. If you think about what the other states should do about it, the other states have an erga omnes obligation to neither nor lend hand nor or accept what Israel is doing. By implication to the and financial support to Israel for the war. So we have, and that's why, like I would say, the recipe that came into the in the General Assembly resolution to implement the ICJ Advisory Opinion on the illegality of the occupation, it's the recipe, the economic sanctions, the economic impact, not to assist, not to lend a hand in certain actions, leading to the expansion of settlements, which is illegal, leading to further escalating what's happening on the ground in Gaza. This is all part and parcel of the obligations of the international community. Whether states will abide by that or not, yet to be seen. Of course, it's a long haul because, again, it includes a lot of interest. But because of it, we started to see a lot of legal action taken by nationals of these countries against the governments to stop and divest from dealing with Israel. So this, in a nutshell, where we are now.
Yeah, and it's great that we have seen a lot of proceedings being put against the states that are still, after all this information, after all the documentation, the footage, the videos, the images, are still sending arms and weapons and supporting unconditionally Israel. That would even say that even the European Union itself is blindly supporting Israel, while when it was with Russia, it was immediate thing. So they were very fast imposing sanctions. They were fast denouncing against its military occupation. But when it pertains to Palestine, we have seen a big problem with recognizing. And the sanctions are, I think, people don't understand how impactful they are, but even sanctioning the settlements and all the agricultural that comes out of it, it's completely impactful. For example, I can give you a small thing that I was buying dates in a natural shop, and it said from West Bank Israeli settlement, and that was in Portugal, being sold by a shop. So, and I imagine that this is a minimum thing compared to the big picture where all the agricultural comes from a lot of agricultural comes from Israel and other businesses.
But this is also, for me, running away from the legal obligations, because EU states now imposes upon Israel to write the origin of the product. So if it's from the settlements, it writes from the settlements. So it leaves it to the consumer to decide whether to buy it or not. But the legal obligation is not to allow the dealings with the products of the settlement. It's not leaving it to the consumers. It's a legal obligation on the state not to allow the trade with the settlers for the products of the settlements. It's as simple as that. So dealing with them and leaving it to the consumer and saying, okay, here I'm abiding by the law by just saying it's from the settlements, that's not abiding by the law. That's from a twist from abiding by the law.
And what do you think about the ICC arrest warrants on Netanyahu and Gallant? And do you see
Okay.
them as being possibly executed? Do you?
I would say, realistically speaking, I don't think I'll see them in my lifetime in The Hague. Yet, the impact of such arrest warrant is huge. Is exactly like the cases of South Africa and Nicaragua in relation to the weapons or the genocide. This is breaking, like groundbreaking when it comes to the untouchable Israel. Talking about no, we can touch Israel legally now. That's number one. The second thing is, despite for me, like some criticism I have towards the decision um, of the arrest warrant and the details of the arrest warrant, and I just mentioned to you this issue that at least parts of Palestine are occupied and so on. Despite all of these legal jargon issues that I have with the arrest warrant, but it's a step. It's a step that is taken in a very, very difficult political environment. And for me, it is saving the ICC. Because so far, with the politicization of several decisions of the ICC, it was clearly leading to disasters for the ICC. And the ICC is a deterrent tool more than an effective tool for implementation, in my point of view. So if it fails to act as a deterrent, then it will turn into a moot internationalization rather than a real active court. And moving forward with the arrest warrant, with some, I'm not the prosecutor, I don't see the evidence before me, but if the case was brought with the strong evidence on the starvation and so on, it will lead to the genocide, it will lead to the ethnic cleansing, it will lead to everything. So it's very clear for me, regardless that the prosecutor only targeted the intentional killing and the starvation as a tool of war. But the case, when it is open, it can bring more and more. And I sincerely hope that the prosecutor in the near future will indict the chief of staff of the Israeli army. Because for me, that was part of the like unbalanced approach, having from the Hamas side, the political leader, the one who is similar to a minister of defense, and the operations, which is the chief of staff. But from the Israeli side, he only brought the political and the like the minister of defense, which is not enough for me, because the one who gives instructions on daily basis and following up everything that's happening on the ground is the chief of staff. So this is something for me. I sincerely hope that within this year we will see the crime of aggression against Israel in relation to Syria. I hope we'll see more of the officials that are inciting for the violence indicted or having arrest warrant. And I do think that such arrest warrants, as we have seen from some of the European leaders, which are like basically some of the biggest allies of Israel. Some said if Netanyahu traveled to our territories, we'll arrest. Others said no. And those who said no will be held accountable internally by their own people. Because some of these countries changed their constitution to be party to the ICC. So you cannot come and say this or that. At the same time, some say Israel has a claim that Israel has a solid legal system, and then like the basis of complementarity is not met here. I would say no, because this is similar to the Darfur case against Harun and Kashib, that simply they were indicted internally. One of them, at least, because the other one became a minister afterwards, was indicted for crimes that is not related to the crimes that the court is indicting them for. This is the same. Netanyahu is being subjected to investigations internally for corruption crimes, not for ethnic cleansing or intentional killing or anything in relation to the Palestinians. So here, there is absolutely no conflictual legal issues or obligations between this and that. So,
Yeah,
and I say it's a step towards the right direction. It's not enough, but it's a step that we hope the court will build on.
yeah, and it's also been shown that the Israeli judicial system doesn't want to prosecute and to investigate Netanyahu on the crimes of starvation, and the same thing with Yoav Galant. So yeah, and I would go to the question that, for example, the big problem I think with the ICC, and as my previous guest told, was the political interference by the US, for example, then upcoming months with imposing sanctions on the ICC itself. Thus meaning that everything, the banks, and it gave the example, simple thing, for example, as Microsoft will not do business with ICC, and it will completely undermine and paralyze the institution. I think that's one of the biggest problems with the will of the ICC to really determine and bring up and continue bringing up the prosecution of Netanyahu and Gallant.
Well, the arrest warrants have already been issued.
Yeah,
The
but
arrest warrants
in
have already been issued. So having another level might be problematic for years for the ICC. Being the realistic person, I think so. At the same time, the states that supported the ICC and wanted the ICC to continue with this, it will either make it or break it for the ICC completely. Why I'm saying this? Because the United States is not party to the Rome Statute. So financially speaking, it cannot do anything to stop a flow of money to the ICC. But what it can do is to freeze assets for the judges, for the prosecution, for individuals if they have accounts in the US. Some of them have nationality, so it would be like if they have the US nationality. So this is part of it. The pressure that they will put on the Netherlands will be massive because it's the seat of the ICC, and they wanted it probably to take action financially against the ICC, which means that the Netherlands will be in breach of its obligations under the host country agreement of the ICC. So I would say the relationship between like the US and parts of Europe will be we'll have Ukraine on the table. So we should not forget that. So this will be definitely will come with implications as of 21st Jan. But how far the states that are supporting the ICC will continue supporting the ICC? This is the entire question. If they are going to bend in, that's the death of the ICC. And I would say that's why I'm saying I'm back to the idea of the anarchy. This two cases of Ukraine and Israel, like Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine, are game changers internationally. And either we will preserve the Westphalian regime, or it will be the death of the Westphalian regime, of sovereignty, non-interference in the internal affairs of states, non-annexing parts of other territories by force, etc., etc. So this is yet to be seen.
Namira, it was a great closing point. We'll need to see what will the future bring, and what will the rulings and the positions of the states and the allies and of the international community, because I believe without them imposing sanctions, without them stop sending arms and weapons to Israel and denouncing what's happening, it won't be stopping for sure. And I want to thank you so much for accepting my invitation. It's been a pleasure. For our audience, please follow us on the social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Spotify, and see you in 2 weeks.